Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. What you're now witnessing in America is a conflict of hysterias. The left thrives on hysteria. Did you ever notice that virtually every hysteria of your lifetime has come from the left? Can you name a national preoccupation and hysteria that came from the right? No, I'm not joking. I'm not saying that, people didn't have odd ideas on the right or something like that, but I can't think of any offhand. It's just, this is the state of the nation is to go from hysteria to hysteria. Do you know why President Barack Obama did not go to ratify this as he should have with the U.S. Senate? Because that's what you do when you sign a treaty. Because it wouldn't have passed, that's why. Because a lot of Democrats would have voted against it. Because it is an economy-shattering thing. It gives the government far more control over American economic life, and it gives international institutions far more control over American life. I don't want to be beholden to a European Union court or the World Court for, I know it's all voluntary. They say, please. It's like the income tax started at 1%. You know what it is today? All right? I pay more than 50% between California and federal and other taxes. Yeah, it's voluntary. I know, right. Like they were the Chinese government called the Chinese soldiers who went into Korea to rescue the monstrous regime of Kim Il-sung. They called them volunteers. Did you know that? They were all volunteers. So please spare me the idiocy and the mendacity of it's voluntary. Right? The man rescued much of the American economy, it was a large, among other things, it was a large transfer of billions upon billions of dollars to other countries like India, because they claim, perfectly legitimately, I might add, I've talked about this often, they claim, why are you stymieing our ability to become an industrialized country by stymieing our ability to use fossil fuels? That's how you in the West got rich. Now, all of a sudden, you're telling us don't use fossil fuels? So the Western countries say, you're right, India. So we will give you hundreds of billions or tens of billions, whatever the billions is, of dollars so that you can catch up and use solar panels to make your economy go. And China, we understand your issues as well, so you don't have to start with these provisions till 2030, is it? Till 2030, which is 13 years from now. Please, okay? As for the United States is no longer the world leader, we were the world leader under Barack Obama. Please, my friends, the United States going it alone does not make it not a world leader. Do you know how many citizens of countries agree with what he has just done? Well, not in Western Europe. They've been brainwashed. All they hear is the BBC in Britain and, the whatever the Deutsche Radio is and so on. I think it's terrific. It's just terrific. I know I felt a little warmer today just as a result. I understand that. Trump to world, drop dead, Daily News. This is a sophisticated newspaper. Okay, fine. How about readers to Daily News, drop dead? It says something below it. Let's see. Pulls America out of historic climate pact, decides to hell with science and Earth's future. Right. It's such propaganda. What science are we saying to hell with? I'd like to know what science. The science that says that the world is getting warmer? Almost everybody agrees. All of our videos on the issue have acknowledged it. So what? The world's gotten warmer and colder throughout its history. Remember, my friends, there are 3 issues, and only 3. But all three have to be in place for you to be hysterical about what the president did. Number one, the earth is getting warmer. Number two, it is happening because of human effort or human activity, namely the burning of fossil fuels. And number three, this will lead to worldwide life-threatening extinction. If any one of those three is missing, it's irrelevant, isn't that right? Let's say the globe is warming, and it's warming because of human activity, but it's not going to lead to some severe crisis of life on Earth. Then it doesn't matter, does it? You have to believe all three. Since Al Gore started on his crusade here, you know how often we've been told, if we don't do it now, we're doomed. This is our last chance. He wrote Earth in the Balance in 1990. That is 27 years ago. We have been doomed for 27 years. Did you know that? But we're not doomed. Nothing really bad is happening. And a lot of good is happening. Did you know that? A lot of good. And no matter how many polar bear pictures you see, the polar bears are doing fine. And it is a very lovable animal to watch. The mommy with the babies, I am as touched, I'm serious, by these photos as you are. But they're doing fine. 1-8-Prager-776. So let's hear some of what the president had to say. And actually, I don't know. No, I'm not going to begin with the president. I'm going to begin with the list. What is news grabbing? Grabbing.
Yeah, it's a news.
Grabian?
It's
A news service? Okay, here are 11 reactions that they chose. They aggregate things. So here's their aggregation of reactions. They have 11. Number 11, Democratic super donor Tom Steyer, who, as an investor in many green tech companies, is anything but a disinterested party. He said, quote, Trump is committing a traitorous act of war against the American people. Why doesn't that alone disqualify him from running for public office? He has committed a traitorous act of war. Why didn't the previous president, if it's a war against the American people, which is disgusting verbiage, but the man's a fanatic. And why didn't President Obama have this ratified by the U.S. Senate? When he had the U.S. Senate, by the way. Remember that? That's why Harry Reid could pass his nuclear option. Well, was the Paris Accord signed while they... Oh, no, it wasn't? Okay. But in any event, why didn't he bring it to the Senate? After all, Republicans would have been fearful of not being reelected had they voted against the treaty. Number 10, John Kerry, one of the leading negotiators of the deal, said Trump is not helping the forgotten Americans he pledged to elevate, but instead he will give their kids asthma. Okay, kids. That's it. They should change it to Trumpma. We're getting Trumpma. Number 9, the ACLU, an organization ostensibly centered around civil rights, offered the bizarre claim that leaving the Paris Agreement, quote, you ready? None of you would have guessed. I will give any of you, you see, there's no way I can measure if you're telling the truth because I didn't know if you sent it in after you heard it or before. Too bad. I wish we had an instantaneous way. Well, we do, I guess. You can text it. Do we have a texting to the show? We don't have that, do we? But this is one of those times where I would like it. What do you think the ACLU attacked the president for? What does the ACLU have to do with global warming? That's a very fair question. But the C may be for climate. The American Climate Liberties Union. Just thinking. Are you ready? Here goes. Leaving the Paris Agreement is, quote, a massive step back for racial justice and an assault on communities of color across the U.S. Wow. That's a real cake taker. This is what we live with from the left. Rationality, the use of reason is no longer held in esteem. 1-8-Prager-776. You are listening to The Dennis Prager Show. Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here for Reed Zakaria. This will be the day that the United States resigned as the leader of the free world. Elon Musk, who runs 3 companies that all depend to some degree on the idea that carbon dioxide will destroy planet Earth, said he takes America's removal from this largely symbolic agreement so seriously that he's going to make up the difference and stop crisscrossing the world in a private jet. Just kidding. That's the way they wrote it. He's resigning from his symbolic post on a symbolic presidential council. One of my favorite is Barack Obama's quote, again breaking with the tradition of former presidents not commenting on present presidents. America now, quote, joins a handful of nations that rejects the future. Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Yeah, I got to think about that. Do I reject the future? I reject the future so much that I want the future to stop right now. I'm so happy right now, and that is the truth. I'm in such a happy state of my life right now. I would like the future to stop. But yeah, good luck with it. Exactly. Reject the future. They reject the future. They think the future is going to be calamity, so they're rejecting it. It's a stupid analogy. Everybody rejects the future in some way. All right, let's hear the president here. Let's start with, I'm sorry? Okay, clip 1, please.
So we're getting out, but we will start to negotiate, and we will see if we can make a deal that's fair. And if we can, that's great. And if we can't, that's fine.
I love that. I love it. I'm sorry.
As president, I can put no other consideration before the well-being of American citizens. The Paris Climate Accord is simply the latest example of Washington entering into an agreement that disadvantages the United States to the exclusive benefit of other countries, leaving American workers, who I love,
I believe he does, by the way,
and taxpayers to absorb the cost in terms of lost jobs, lower wages, shuttered factories, and vastly diminished economic production. Thus, as of today, the United States will cease all implementation of the non-binding Paris Accord and the draconian financial and economic burdens the agreement imposes on our country.
Then he goes on to speak about the decline in by 2040 of, let's see here, paper down 12%, cement 23%, iron and steel 38%, coal 86%, natural gas down 31%. The cost of the economy would be close to $3 trillion in lost GDP and 6.5 million industrial jobs. Okay. Next, number 3, please. Sean, please, number 3.
According to the rest of the world applauded when we signed the Paris Agreement. They went wild. They were so happy. For the simple reason that it put our country, the United States of America, which we all love, at a very, very big economic disadvantage.
Number 4, please.
We have among the most abundant energy reserves on the planet, sufficient to lift millions of America's poorest workers out of poverty. Yet under this agreement, we are effectively putting these reserves under lock and key, taking away the great wealth of our nation. It's great wealth. It's phenomenal wealth.
He's right on all points. Number 5.
Even if the Paris Agreement were implemented in full, with total compliance from all nations, it is estimated it would only produce a 0.2 of 1 degree. Think of that. This much Celsius reduction in global temperature by the year 2100.
And now his most famous line of this talk, number 6.
I was elected to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris.
I love it. Then the mayor of Pittsburgh, a Democrat, got on to say, yeah, but Pittsburgh voted for Hillary Clinton. Okay, fine. So I'll put it this way. Those who voted for him, whether in Pittsburgh or in Tacoma, Washington, voted for him to represent the citizens of Pittsburgh, not Paris. All right. Number 7, please.
Beyond the severe energy restrictions inflicted by the Paris Accord, it includes yet another scheme to redistribute wealth out of the United States through the so-called Green Climate Fund, nice name, which calls for developed countries to send $100 billion.
That's right.
To developing countries, all on top of America's existing and massive foreign aid
And by
payments.
the way, let me make something clear. That $100 billion is going to just increase corruption. Foreign aid is the greatest, in most cases, government-to-government foreign aid. I'm not talking about where you send a check to help the hungry in Guatemala. That's a very good thing. But government-to-government foreign aid, which is by far the largest amount, is a corruption creator. It keeps countries back. I have had numerous African economists, not African-American, African economists on this program begging us to stop the aid program. All it does is prop up tyrants. That's what it does. It doesn't go to people. It goes to make a wealthy, corrupt class of kleptocrats, people who steal for a living, richer and richer. And if they're not already kleptocrats, when this infusion of money makes them such, it's too much money for it to be handled honestly. Let India develop the way it wants. If it's going to use fossil fuel, it'll use fossil fuel. And by the way, there is nothing stopping all the companies that want to make solar panels and windmills right now from continuing. He's not putting a ban on it. They act like there's a ban on this development. If these business leaders are so sincere about the future is natural power, then good. That's great. I'm not against it. I'd like to put solar panels on my house. I want to save money on electricity. Back in a moment. 1-8-PRAGER-776. I like this, by the way. I know. Where is this particular music from? Do you know? Is it a movie? I assume it's a movie. Not a movie? Where's it from, guys? Just an album of Latin music? What did you say? Say it again? It's Cuban? All right. You know what? I am so familiar with Cuban music, I can tell you what part of Cuba this comes from. The Northeast. Pretty good, huh? That's correct. Hey, since we're doing a little Latin music, why don't you give me Hugo Chavez singing about Hillary Clinton, will you? We haven't heard that in a while, and that's Latin too. Okay, what do you say?
Soy mal querido
por Hillary Clinton. Okay. All right, that's enough. Thank you. All right, here we go. By the way, this is the amount of absurdity the world is filled with. It keeps me sane, I must admit. AMAC, by the way, is terrific. And it is what they call a conservative army, and it is the response to AARP. Look, you're going to get the tremendous discounts on everything from health insurance to hotels to restaurants. But it's also going to lobby for good causes if you're a conservative. Now, if you're on the left, and I have many listeners who are, you should consider AMAC for the benefits, but I totally understand why you'd be in AARP, one of the biggest lobbyists for Obamacare, for example. But otherwise, join AMAC if you're 50 or over. Call 888-262-2006, 888-262-2006, or click on the banner for AMAC at my website. Great day. You know what? I actually think he's more presidential today. When a president says, I don't care what others think, I love it. The world, I love this notion that this is so big. You have to understand that people like Thomas Friedman at the New York Times, these people want us to be part of Europe. They are culturally, morally a part of Europe. The New York Times columnists have much more in common with the average European than the average American. There is no, if you said to these people, you have to spend a year living with a middle-class family in France or a middle-class family in Nebraska, there isn't even, it's not even a question. They would go out of their minds with such a family in middle America. So this notion, you can't have it both ways. We're the leader if we do what Europe wants. Get that? That's the new form of logic. A leader does what others want. No, a leader does what a leader thinks is right. Then we are a leader. All righty. Okie dokie. So let's see. We have a few more from the president, correct? We didn't play what? I know. We can skip 2. And we just have 8, and that's it? Good. Okay. Good. No. We didn't do 7. Go to 7.
Beyond the severe energy restrictions inflicted by the Paris Accord, it includes yet another scheme to redistribute wealth out of the United States through the so-called Green Climate Fund. Nice name. Which calls for developed countries to send $100 billion to developing countries, all on top of America's existing and massive foreign aid payments.
That's correct. And I talked to you about how that induces corruption in the third world. Folks, let me make something clear. If the future is non-fossil fuel-based energy, if that's the future, then it's irrelevant whether in the Paris Accords or not, right? It is irrelevant. If it's the future, then it'll be the future. I have nothing against it. I'm totally happy if there are aesthetically good-looking solar panels. I told you I want to put them on my own house. It'll save money ultimately on electricity, and we live in a sunny area, Southern California. I have nothing against it. I don't want the Paris Accords. By the way, if you want clarity on this whole issue, just watch the videos at Prager University on climate change, which they obviously got more hundreds of thousands of views just in a day, because that's what you need. Your friends don't understand. The head of climatology at MIT, the leading climatologist in the United States, is against the Paris Accords, is against the whole hysteria. Okay? We have him. It was a coup getting him. This was not easy. He's not a young man, and he's not aching to do videos, but he knew how important it is, and he made a video for us. Likewise, Bjorn Lomborg, just on the Paris Peace Accords. The Paris Climate Agreement won't change the climate. That's the name. These are all at Prager University. Just send them to friends and relatives. Okay? While they're thinking that the Earth is in existential crisis. Okay. By the way, it's life is governed to a certain extent by what you fear. I fear first and foremost God, okay? Just just so you'll know, I'm a religious man, and I do. I think that I will have to answer for all my behaviors before the creator of the universe, who is a moral creator, along with Benjamin Franklin. That is my belief. That is my fundamental belief. It is the most important belief on earth, that you will stand before a perfect judge one day for how you behave. That is what I believe. Okay? But beyond that, I'll tell you what I fear on earth. What I fear on earth is the left. I fear the left, and I fear Islamism. Islamism is the movement to impose Islam on the world. I don't fear Islam, I fear Islamism. All right? So if you're a Muslim and you have no interest in imposing Sharia on humanity, it's a non-issue to me. If you think it's a personal thing, like any Jewish or Christian practice, you do it. It's between you and God. I don't have a problem. That's what worries me, not global climate. But by the way, I'll tell you, this falls into the category of something I've spoken about my whole life. Those who do not fight real evils fight imaginary evils or lesser evils. It's one of the Prager rules of life. The left is the leading practitioner of that. Instead of fighting communism, they fought anti-ballistic missiles or whatever fight they were on. The great evils are not fought by the left. So they concentrate on something else in order to feel good about themselves, that they're doing good on earth. So you don't fight Islamism, you don't fight encroaching government. Well, actually, they're for it. Why would they fight it? But what you fight is carbon dioxide emissions. And it's now called a pollutant. It is mind-boggling. Carbon dioxide. If any scientist who died 30 years ago were resurrected and told that carbon dioxide is now referred to as a pollutant, he would not believe that he had come back to Earth. The absurdity of it. The food of life is now called a pollutant. All right, what are we up to here? All right, so give me the next one.
As the Wall Street Journal wrote this morning, the reality is that withdrawing is in America's economic interest and won't matter much to the climate. The United States under the Trump administration will continue to be the cleanest and most environmentally friendly country on earth.
Okay, cool. And one more, please.
In 2015, the United Nations, departing top climate officials, reportedly described the $100 billion per year as peanuts and stated that the $100 billion is the tail that wags the dog. In 2015, the Green Climate Fund's executive director reportedly stated that estimated funding needed would increase to $450 billion per year after 2020.
That's right. It was to take away a lot of money from America in particular and Western countries generally. To be honest, and I'm sorry to say this, I don't want Germany's lead in world affairs. It has not proven itself a wise nation. Okay? So this notion that, I know the New York Times editorial board are just, they are as big a fan, they're as big fans of Angela Merkel as I am of Donald. They're probably a bigger fan. She can do no wrong in their eyes. So between Angela Merkel and Donald Trump, the left takes Angela Merkel. That's it. So let's be honest. Let's be honest. People who want to fundamentally transform the United States of America are not in power now, and it's driving them crazy. That's what it's about. Do you know that? That is what it's about. Okie dokie. Let's see here. Tom, let's see. Let me see. What else do we have here? All right. Pretty much everybody's calling in with the variation on agreement here. So I appreciate that, and you all have fine points. We need to have climate warming so the population can grow. Well, it certainly doesn't grow in freezing at times. And you know, it really is true. There was worry about global freezing in the 1970s. Didn't it make it to the cover of Newsweek or something? I now join the Newsweek writers. What do you think of that? I expect it to be published by Newsweek, like you expect to predict the next Kentucky Derby winner. Been a lot of discussion on my article about conservatives who don't support Donald Trump, who attack him. I wonder what are all their reactions now? I know I'm not saying this combatively. I'm curious. How do they react to this? We'll be back in a moment. Hi, everybody. You're listening to the Dennis Prager Show. There was a great headline a few days ago or last week, Taormina, Italy, where the G7 met, and McClatchy headlines, Trump talks terrorism while Europe shouts climate. That tells you all you need to know about the Europeans and the left, because the left dominates Europe. That's exactly right. That summarizes the conflict between the left and the right. Trump talks terrorism while Europe shouts climate. Europe will be shouting climate as it recedes from civilization, as it incorporates more and more of values that are not Western. That's what's happening. But they'll be talking climate. That's right. As more and more churches close and more mosques are built, some of you may be totally fine with that, and that's your choice. I understand. To those, I would ask this of anybody. I would ask this of anyone. If $1.5 billion, it's just a thought question. What is it? 1 billion? How many? 1.5 billion Muslims? Is that right? If all the Muslims of the world converted to Christianity tomorrow, or all the Christians in the world converted to Islam tomorrow, would there be any moral difference in the world? All right. It's a simple question. So based on your response to that, you would have a reaction to the European preoccupation with climate, as opposed to the decline of Christianity in Europe, the rapid disappearance, indeed, of what made Europe Europe. And for the record, I say this as a Jew, so I don't have a theological axe to grind here. I have a moral axe to grind, because I think morally. I think what will produce more goodness and what will produce less goodness. That is the way I think, since I remember thinking at about 10. I thought about good and bad. I don't know what is more important than that. Trump talks terrorism while Europe shouts climate. And Europe is the entire left in the U.S. It's not just Europe. It's just that the left has taken over Europe, certainly Western Europe. All right. Sarah, Tom, Ken, Larry, sorry indeed I couldn't get your calls. It is now time for the Happiness Hour. And visit nosafespaces.com. Help us make a movie, Adam Carolla and me, about our universities. Hi, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager, and welcome back, or welcome to the show. One of the deeper thinkers of our time is Michael Walsh, political columnist for the New York Post and PJ Media. I had him on for his extremely important new book, The Devil's Pleasure Palace, The Cult of Critical Theory and the Subversion of the West. It's the title is much more intimidating than the writing in the book. You should get it. It's now out in paperback. Anyway, Michael Walsh, you know how delighted I am always to talk to you, so welcome back.
Thank you very much, Dennis. Good to talk to you, too.
Thank you. That's very kind. You have a piece in the New York Post. Comey's firing is a gift to the FBI. I want to ask you something before I get into that issue. I'm writing a piece for my next week's column, and it is about all the conservatives who were against Trump. And you're a conservative who defends him as I do and supports him as I do. And among conservative writers and what we call public intellectuals, you're a public intellectual, I'm a public intellectual, we are in a minority among conservatives. It's unbelievable when I think about it, but I believe that to be true. If that is true, what is your explanation for all the conservatives who are anti-Trump?
That's a very good point, Dennis. In my opinion, and as you know, it's caused a great rift in the conservative movement, and it started once Trump secured the nomination, and even before that. I think, and this is a sad thing to say, but I believe it from my own experience in talking with our fellow conservatives, they never really wanted to win. They never had any plan for winning. And when the one person who could actually win came, they rejected him. And now they want to prove that they were right. So they haven't stopped. They continually shoot fire at the White House, not only at the president, but at the very able group of people around him. I know many of them personally. They're friends of mine. I don't understand it, but I think they were afraid of actually having to put their money where their mouths have been for so long to absolutely no effect.
You know, I knew I would get an answer from you that I hadn't thought of. No, that's one of the reasons I love talking to you. I have additional thoughts, and I'm going to bounce them off you, but I want to analyze what you just said for a moment. So your primary point was did you say they didn't want to win or didn't expect to win?
They don't want to win.
Okay, that's fascinating. That would not have occurred to me. You're telling me that Jonah Goldberg and Brett Stephens and Ben Shapiro and Max Boot and what's Irving Kristol's son's name?
Bill Kristol.
Bill Kristol, of course. And so many others, and George Will, they didn't want to win?
Well, all I can tell you is Jonah said that to me to my face on a National Review cruise when we were talking, and I, always advocated that our goal should be like my famous Civil War hero Ulysses S. Grant, total victory and unconditional surrender. That must be the goal in order to fight effectively. And I was told that's ridiculous. This fight's going to go on forever, and there'll never be a winner. So. What can I take from that other than thinking that they don't want to win?
Well, had the nominee been Marco Rubio, I'm sure they would have supported him.
Yes, I suppose they would have, but he wasn't going to win. I think, as you may know, Dennis, get a little plug for myself here at the Post, I was one of the very few people who consistently explained to the readership at the New York Post why Trump had a chance. And I wrote a piece 10 days before the election of Trump's path to 270. And it was much easier than it looked to the consensus media. And, in fact, that proved to be the correct analysis of the situation. So I think my bona fides on this issue are fairly clear.
No, they certainly are. I want to take calls because this issue, and I'm going to bounce a theory that I have off you as well, because it's actually disturbing me more and more, conservatives who are anti-Trump. And it's really, I speak of the Civil War in the United States between left and right.
Yes.
And that I do believe literally. I don't think there's a civil war within conservatism, God forbid. But there is a rift, and it is troubling to me. The very, very bright and thoughtful Michael Walsh, whose book is up at DennisPrager.com, The Devil's Pleasure Palace. We had him on when it came out. Now it's in paperback. He thinks through everything. Back in a moment. Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager here. I read so much of what Michael Walsh writes because it's always clear and original. I love original minds. He's a columnist, political columnist at the New York Post and PJ Media. You were with Time Magazine for much of your life, right?
Yes, sir. I was there for 16 really wonderful, fun-filled years.
Yeah, because you were the music critic, right?
I was the classical music critic.
Right. By the way, this is going to fascinate you. I will be conducting at the Disney Music Center.
Oh, no. How can I miss that? I'm back east right now.
Well, don't miss it. It's August 16th. Really try to come. It'll be a terrific evening.
I can't wait. What are you conducting? What's the repertoire?
I'm conducting a Haydn symphony. Then
I knew it was going to be Haydn, Dennis.
You're right. No. Haydn will thank me when we meet in the next world. I don't start me because I could spend the next hour losing listeners just talking about Haydn. But anyway, and then I will be. Here's the beauty. Then this is the Santa Monica Symphony Orchestra, terrific orchestra, and it's obviously one of the great halls in the country.
Yeah.
And anyway, but then I will explain the symphony using the orchestra, and it's a fascinating, and it's never done, almost never done. For example, I'll just say, let's hear this section. And now I want you to all hear it without the second violins, and all of a sudden people will realize how much and the section that they may not pay any attention to contributes to the piece. And then I'm going to interview the members of the orchestra about what it's like to play their instrument. Anyway, and then the permanent conductor, who was fantastic, he will be doing Beethoven's Fifth. So it's going to be a great night.
Oh, that's great. Well, I hope I can make it.
Yes, I know. We would love to see you. Anyway, just because you were the music critic at Time, I mentioned that. Now, back to us. So I asked you about this phenomenon of all these conservatives who were against Trump. By the way, I was against Trump in the primaries and said that I'll vote for him if he's nominated, and then I was passionately for him once he was nominated because I feel like you. It's a war you have to win.
What choice did we
That's
have?
right, exactly. That's right. And they never had an answer. There was no answer.
They always came back and said, it's not an either-or case. Well, of course it's an either-or.
No, that's exactly right. It drove me out of my mind that such bright, intelligent, good people could not confront the consequences. Well, I'm not for Hillary. Of course you're for Hillary. If you're a would-be Republican voter who doesn't vote Republican, then you are supporting the Democrat.
Yeah, well,
okay? This is a fifth grader understands this.
Conversation about this for hours. Of course, you had a moral choice, and you failed. You failed. All of you right-wing, alleged conservatives who continue to set up this drum fire against very good people in Washington, very good people. I'm talking about at the White House, on the National Security Council, in the Supreme Court.
The cabinet.
People who have reached out to me personally to say how much they love the Devil's Pleasure Palace. I have to get a plug-in for that. But how much it affected them and how the way they think about the war we're fighting for the soul of our country, both domestically and abroad, to try to prevent that from happening because your conservative principles, that's a word I coined, are offended by Trump was simply an immoral choice. That's my statement on this.
All right. Well, you certainly are passionate on the subject, and I am passionate on the subject. So you gave the theory that in their heart, there is almost a greater comfort in being on the outside and sniping at Democrats rather than having power. Is that?
Yeah, there's no risk for them.
Okay, fine. So let me tell you my theory. I have two theories, and I accept yours. I have two theories. And I want you to react. One is, I'm certain of. This is not even a theory. I am certain that there is not a single anti-Trump conservative who believes that the left is as mortal a threat to this society as I do. Mm-hmm. It's simple. If they did, they would have voted for Trump.
Yeah, I think that's as plain as day.
That's right. It's as plain as day. That's right. It's as plain as day. And by the way, my friend made a Prager University video, and he is my friend. But Bret Stephens wrote in the New York Times last week that, I'm paraphrasing, the truth is if Hillary had won, the country wouldn't have been doomed. We'd have 4 years of her, and then we would regroup and we would fight another day. But I think we were doomed if she won. So in other words, it's an honest difference. You and I believe the left is a mortal threat. I would go so far as say Western civilization, and they don't. The other one is this: there is, and this I came to this literally in the last week. It hit me, and that is that there is a utopian streak, not just on the left but on the right. I did not realize that. I thought conservatives were anti-utopian thinking, but I'm wrong. In other words, they don't believe the best is the enemy of the better. They believe we have to strive for the best. If you are not pure conservative, then by golly, we can't support you. You have to be well nigh close to perfect. Then you'll get our support.
Yeah, that's distressing. It's like they're the shakers of the conservative movement, busily proclaiming fidelity while gradually putting themselves out of business. Also, Bret Stephens wrote a very disparaging piece about my friend Michael Anton's famous essay, The Flight 93 Election.
That's right. It was that. That's that's what I'm talking about.
Yes, precisely that. And let me just say that I take Mike Anton's side of this, not Bret Stephens' side. It was the Flight 93 election.
That's it. No. In a nut, that's it. That's the point. You and I believe it was the Flight 93 election, and the Never Trumpers do not.
That's correct. Yeah, they would rather fight the way the American Indians often fought because they were such a strange combatant for Westerners confronting them. They would ride up to the enemy and touch him with a coup stick and then go back. And that was the equivalent of killing him. Now, sometimes they'd kill him, as Custer found out, but other times they'd just count coups. And counting coups is what the so-called conservative media, who is against Trump, now engages in. That's all they do. They're comfortable with that. They didn't want the apple cart overturned, and they like being in the minority forever.
Back in a moment with Michael Walsh. God, do I enjoy talking to Michael Walsh. Whew. In fact, if you were here in the studio, Michael, I would have given you a back rub during the break.
Thank you so much, Dennis. That would be a formidable back rub coming from a man of your size and stature. But
that's right. It would be a formidable. I agree with that. Michael Walsh, whose book is now out in paperback, and I have no doubt it has influenced a great number of people. The Devil's Pleasure Palace. And it's totally accessible to all of you. It's just I say that only because the subtitle might intimidate you: The Cult of Critical Theory and the Subversion of the West. But it's what's happening at our universities, and it's what's happening in our culture. There is a subversion of the West. There is, and this is really, I am convinced most politics is psychology. I knew this in graduate school. Why people gravitate to is very rarely, I will measure the facts. I have the following moral values, and combining my values and the facts, I come to the following position. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, for many people. There may well be a death wish among very many Westerners. I opened up the show today. Are you aware of this cultural appropriation?
Oh yes, yeah. I heard the first hour of the show earlier today. Yes, sir.
Now, so if I am white and I make burritos, I should be drummed out of business.
Well, I don't want to hear another word about drinking beer on St. Patrick's Day, there, buddy. Okay.
You're so right. No,
that's Irish
yes.
Only.
No, that's exactly right. It's beyond evil. It's actually absurd.
Well, I think the way to think of it is the West has become a suicide cult, and it's now embracing its best friend, the death cult of Islam. That is why none of this gets pushed back or fought back. And in the meantime, here in the left, I wrote about this in my book, Rules for Radical Conservatives. I called it the Cold Civil War. The left will attack, thanks to the Frankfurt School and critical theory and all of the rest I write about in Devil's Pleasure Palace. They will attack every single thing, period. They will not stop. They never stop, they never sleep, they never quit. We have to understand this about the nature of the enemy, or we will lose the fight. Simple.
I'm quiet because I just wanted to register with people. Michael Walsh, you are very special. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
Right. It's a great achievement, Western civilization. I don't understand why we're not trying to protect it. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'm Dennis Prager.